All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching the Phantasmagorias shorts package. I am lucky enough to be joined by uh, 7 of the filmmakers here. And if I could just have you each go around and introduce yourself and introduce the film that you are affiliated with. And Dean, you're in my main window right now, so let's go ahead and have you start.
Fair enough. Hi guys, my name is Dean Law. I'm the writer and the producer, or one of the writers and the one of the producers on Inferno. That was everything I needed to say, right?
That's good.
Great, good start.
Kevin, go ahead and go next.
Hey, I'm Kevin McTurk, and I am the director of The Haunted Swordsman, the Bunraku samurai puppet film.
Jason?
Hello, I'm Jason Granger, and I'm here for the Swiss movie Look What You've Done. And I'm one of the actors. I'm not the writer or director. I'm here representing the writer, actually, who couldn't make it.
Summers Brothers, go ahead.
I'm Robert Summers. I'm the one of the co-writer, co-director of the horror short I'll Be Back Tomorrow.
I'm Russell Summers. I am also the co-writer, co-director of I'll Be Back Tomorrow. And in case you're wondering, yes, we are twins.
And Jenna, you're the last one.
Hi, I'm Jenna Gillette. I am the director and writer of the animated short film Mechanical Dancer.
And actually, I'm sorry, Jordan, you are the last one.
My name is Jordan McKittrick, and I'm the writer and director of Carl the Exorcist.
All right. Well, thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to do this. We're recording this on Easter morning, and as you can tell, some of our filmmakers are as far away as Australia, and others are as close to us as Los Angeles. So thank you again for taking the time to do this. First off, let's start with a real basic question. What was the creative inspiration for your films? If you could talk a little bit about that. And Summers Brothers, why don't you go first, since yours is most notably based on a true story?
I would say the most creative inspiration for our movie was the location became available. So we immediately thought back on a childhood memory of someone who told us a rather scary story that they purported to be true. And so we just expanded that into something a little bit longer.
Great. Jason, why don't you go ahead next and talk about the inspiration behind Look What You've Done.
Yeah, so I know the writer, but I don't know exactly what inspired him to create this psychological thriller. But what I know is that when the director read the script, she knew exactly what he wanted from that script to be made into a movie. And then she knew that she needed to make something that would make us question our actions or beliefs, and open a way to reflection. Like, we should reflect on this and be like, wow, what's going on in the movie and inside of us.
Great. Jenna, why don't you go ahead and take the baton?
So our film kind of had that, sorry, I have a baby in the background. So we have our film's kind of based on the old 1920s sort of silent film era with German Expressionism. So we wrote the story originally, and it's kind of a little bit based on that old-timey mad scientist kind of theme. So yeah, we thought going for the sort of silent film German Expressionism era would be pretty fitting. So it was kind of fun. Sorry.
It's okay. We can see the loves in the background there. So
He wants to participate.
Yeah, exactly. Some interesting things to say about your film. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Sure. The Haunted Swordsman was inspired by my love of samurai films and ghost story films. I love Akira Kurosawa and Lone Wolf and Cub, and also there was a 1960s film Qui-Gon, which was a horror ghost story anthology samurai film. And I work in creature effects as a puppet builder and special effects artist. And this was my third puppet film. So the first two were Victorian inspired ghost stories. And then I always wanted to do a samurai film. So that's where the inspiration was from.
Great. Jordan, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Almost everything I do are comedies, and they all tend to revolve around people who pretend to know what they're doing. And so whether it's like someone who is leading a spiritual retreat and has to pretend they know what they're doing, or performing an exorcism and they're kind of just winging it. I'm just attracted to that sort of character. And I'm attracted to, like, I was watching The Exorcist and I was wondering, like, well, I think a husband and wife could reasonably have different opinions about how to handle a situation, or if your kid were possessed. And I thought that was a really fun well of to draw. I was very inspired by that idea as well. So I wanted to play with both a priest who didn't know what he was doing, and then also a husband and wife who maybe had different ideas of how to approach the situation. And so that was my inspiration.
Yeah, if only Reagan wasn't being raised by a single parent, right?
Yeah, I know. That's an interesting feature. Yeah.
Dean, why don't you talk a little bit about the origin of Inferno?
Actually, it came to us way back in 2018, I think it was, when we were in LA as my partner, who's my partner in life and my co-writer, and progressively more and more my creative partner and basically everything, the film's director, Catherine Chediak Putnam. We were in LA for some business, and I get quite homesick very quickly. And there's also this in Australia, there's quite an interesting tradition of Australian Gothic storytelling, and this image just sort of kept popping up in my head of a door standing in a field, and it just really stood out and just kept on popping into my head of going like, there's something here, but I don't fully know what it is. But then at the same time, we're partners who are in our early 30s, and we're looking towards having kids and all of that, and we've got interesting histories of whether it's mental illness or medical conditions and that sort of thing in our family, and find ourselves going like, well, what are we going to pass on? And we found this story of like generational trauma and that sort of stuff that just ended up connecting with that other idea in a really interesting way. So yeah, that's sort of where it came from.
God, I just had a question that kind of popped out of my head. But you talked about the Australian Gothic kind of background to your piece. Talk a little bit more about kind of supernaturalism and how you approached grounding that in the very everyday nature of like contemporary society.
That's an interesting question. As far as sorry, I'm sort of blanking on that. Maybe that's a better question for someone else.
All right, we'll go. Yeah, some of these are just coming to me but we'll go move on. Jenna, you got the baby there. Talk a little bit about your use of music in the piece. What I really loved about what you did in that was you didn't just take one piece of classical music to score it all, but you and your husband, co-creator, took a number of classical music pieces and kind of strung that together. Can you talk a little bit about weaving the music into your visuals?
All right, so the music, there's definitely a bit of a backstory there. So we wanted to make the animated film feel a lot like it like authentically came out of the silent film era. So, and based in German Expressionism in the 1920s, post World War I, Germany was kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And so that kind of required them to, every film that they made, they would have had to look internally for, you know, music, actors, inspiration. And, you know, so let me see here. Sorry, my kid's wrestling with me. But so we kind of wanted to restrict ourselves to looking for music that had been composed as of that year and was also, you know, from the area. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more like involved in than that, I suppose. But I mean, like choreographing the movie, because you know, there's ballet, there's dancing in it, but it's also a horror movie, so there's a lot of growing anticipation and jump scares, things like that. So, you know, it was a bit of a challenge, kind of timing already existing classical music, you know, to a lot of that visual. But you know, it was a fun challenge, but that was a lot more handled by my husband, that side of it. So I think he ended up going through, I think it was 11 hours of classical music he listened to kind of compile it for the film. So that was quite a process.
Well, it's very seamless, so send him my regards. But the way he went from, you know, Bach to Beethoven to Mahler, and just kind of, again, I could hear little bits and snatches of each, and it flowed all together, and it kind of creates this weird, almost, you know, postmodern piece in its own right that's composed of all these other little snippets of German classical music. So
I really
send him my
appreciate
regards.
to identify some of that. That's pretty cool.
Jason, let's talk a little bit about look what you've done and your involvement. Talk a little bit about casting and how you kind of, what your first impressions of the script were and how you approached the character you played.
Yeah, sure. So the first time I read the script, it was like a first or a second draft, and the writer Ludovic wasn't sure about the ending, and so I helped him a little bit to enhance a bit this ending, because I read the script and my first impression was like, what is the message? What do you want to talk about? Because your ending is like it's like cut like this, and I'm like, I'm not sure I understand what's your point. So he made different changes, and with the director, they succeed in making something in which what I was saying before, in which you question yourself and your beliefs and also your actions. And that's also, I think, because of my character, which was a bit difficult to find, because the writer never came to me and saying, this is an entity, this is a man, this is something, this is devil, this is an angel. He never put a label on it. So for me, I was like, okay, so I need to do a bit of a search through what I have in the script, because I don't have much background on it. And so at the end of the day, for me, playing this character was just someone at the office doing his job and enjoying it. And through it, we don't know if he's bad, if he's good, I think he doesn't know himself, he just enjoys it. For him, it's probably good. But that was a bit difficult to approach this character at the beginning, because, as I said, there was no background, no anything, no label. But that was also interesting. And playing with the two other actors was really, really fun, because my character is kind of all powerful in the environment where we play, in this interrogation room. And so that was really cool to feel like all this power through my character and having control in the whole scene. Like, you are my pawns, I do whatever I want. So I went on set with this philosophy: this is my office, this is my job, this is my place, you're my pawns. Like a really bad boss, you know. Trying to control and everything. So yeah, I hope it answers the question.
Oh, that was great. Jordan, let's also talk about your piece in terms of casting. Comedies are kind of a little bit more difficult to do, particularly when it's an ensemble piece, and in your film you've got basically two sets of two different characters playing off of each other. Can you talk a little bit about finding those two and making sure that the chemistry worked between the pair that was upstairs doing the exorcism and then the parents downstairs discussing what to do for takeout?
Sure. Yeah, I really love the actors that are in the film, and I knew all of them personally, so that was a big explanation for how they got there. And so, yeah, I'd worked with Zach on something that I had shot. I used to work as a DP, so Zach was in something that I shot for another filmmaker. He plays the priest. Michael Strassner plays the father. He was in something that I'd shot for another filmmaker as well as a DP, as was Katie O'Brien, who plays the mother. She was in something that I had shot in 2019. And Christina, I've worked with her many, many times. And then Ellie, I just made a posting online, and I found that she had a really great tape on like Backstage or Actors Access or something like that. And so I just, based on having worked with these people, the parts are written to some degree for their strengths. So that's an aspect too. But yeah, I just went for it, and we didn't test or rehearse ahead of time or do chemistry reads with anybody. How I shoot is I kind of go long, so I don't cut between takes. So it's very you can see the process unfolding if you watch the raw footage, because I'm talking to them and I say, I'm going to change that line. This is the new line. It's going to be this. And then, if somebody else does something funny and I like the way that two things are going to play, like cutting from upstairs, downstairs, I'll change it on the day. And so I'll end up with like 4 hours of footage. And that's kind of how I shoot. And that's how you sort of look at what's in front of you and think about what's working, what lines maybe aren't working. And then I just change it right on the day if I feel like it's not working.
So sounds like there's a great deal of improv, not only from you, but from your actors as well. Did they kind of give input into that humor?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I hope that they felt like they had a lot of space to play around and try new ideas. And we would change the blocking. It'd be like, okay, now you sit down, you stand up, you stand over there. And, we'll play it that way. And then, maybe you both sit down, try to both sit down in the chair at the same time. Like, just silly things like that. Because it's like, basically I had a handle on what the characters were coming from. So a lot of the dialogue just does spring from that. Yeah. Improvisational.
Great. Well, this is a short film package, and the shortest of the films is in the package is The Summers Brothers. Could you two talk a little bit about concision and trying to get that unity of effect with such a small space of time? You two have done a couple other films, one of which Couples Night played here at SIFF. I've seen another one. All of your short films are available on your Vimeo page, but there's another one we had on the Alaska Airlines channel. And you guys work wonderfully, are able to make these really nice, concise shorts. Can you talk a little bit about your economy of time?
I think we think that probably for us, if we go too long, we probably bore everybody. We just kind of ramble or something. But I think we like the idea of a short being short if we can do it. Not only for budgetary and scheduling considerations, just to keep it concise, but I think for us, a lot of times when you watch a movie, you can always lose the first part and the last part. It's just, you want to keep it tight. So with this one, I think, so when we do our shorts, we just want them to be sort of a setup and kind of a punchline. And I think with this one though, it feels a little longer because there's a conversation without a lot of, mostly in one place, but it takes place in real time. So it feels a little longer, but it's actually not that. I'm always surprised when we go back and look at the edit how short it is. So I think that, and with this one, I think all we really had was, we just kept it simple. Like, what if you had a dream and someone confirmed that it was something that they had experienced as well? And then what if there's a noise in the house that you both hear? So I think that was, we just, we kept from that idea, and we try to stay close to it, I think.
Yeah, and the same with the ending. We just, for budgetary reasons, we just didn't have the money or time to do something particularly expansive or like some of these other amazing shorts here. And so we just thought it was more interesting if it was almost kind of a jolt, and that was all you got out of it.
Well, I think we all certainly got the jolt on that one.
I hope so.
Yeah. Kevin, your film is relatively unique in our package, and your methods are a little unique too. You use a lot of puppetry. In fact, your previous film, the Mill at Calder's End, won our jury award for best short film one year. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to be involved in the puppetry filmmaking world and your approach to what you're doing in this film specifically?
Sure. Absolutely. So am I on? Sorry.
You are on. You're good.
Oh, great. So sorry. So yes, my background is creature effects. I've moved out to Los Angeles, and I've been working since about 1992 at various creature shops. I worked at Stan Winston Studio through the 90s and was involved on all the Jurassic Park films and puppeteered on those films, and moved to New Zealand and worked at Weta Workshop and built models and miniatures there. So it's kind of in my blood to just work in special effects. And so when it came time to do a short film, basically I went to film school, but then put that aside to work in effects. So I wanted to get back to making short films again. And I knew how to build puppets. So I was awarded a grant from the Jim Henson Foundation to do a short. That was my first short. And then I did The Mill at Calder's End, and then did Haunted Swordsman from a Kickstarter. So I am obsessed with this style of filmmaking, and I actually I have the character here. I can show you how big they are. Let me go to, hold on just a second. I just want to make sure there we go. So this is about the size of the character. So they're about 3 feet tall, and they have, with each film they got more and more involved. So he has a sword, and it takes 3 puppeteers. So there's a one puppeteer in the back controlling the head and torso, and there's a pistol grip in here, so you can do head up and down. And then there's different expression heads. Sorry. So this is like the when he's getting thrown against the wall or getting attacked, and they with each film they got more and more involved. So this is like a wig that was hand tied, and then that's sort of this character. And then this is the small severed head that he carries around, but this one doesn't do any talking. So we made a full-size one, and this has servos that controls eye blinks, brows, and talking, and the jaw. And so I didn't want to get too long-winded, but that's sort of the approach.
Got lots of robotics. My God. I actually, Kevin, a couple of years ago, showed me around the shop where he works. It's an experience I will never forget, and I am not legally allowed to talk about. Dean, let's go back to you. The thing I really loved about your piece was this kind of the world you created. It's got this literally a microcosm in there, that portal of the door going into the house. Can you talk a little bit about the aspects of creating that interior space, the creature you had, and just some of the technical challenges of dealing with, fire? I mean, you turn your place into a literal inferno. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached all of those elements?
Yeah. So I think I wonder if everyone on the panel can relate to this. Like you always want to do the exact opposite of what you just did. And so like, we look back at we're doing Inferno and we're like, Jesus, like I don't know how we managed to pull off all those separate elements at the same time. And so now we're planning something, but it's like right the other way. It's looking at all of your films or looking at some of the films here that are just those really simple setups and being like, yeah, I want to go do that. That looked like much more fun than what we had. But well, you guys could probably see my pajama pants if I sit like that. No, I'm from Brisbane down here in Australia, and we have a bit of a thriving film scene here, but it meant that a lot of the spaces that we could shoot in, you know, it was shot in a soundstage. We built a set for it because it's the thing when you come and tell a location owner like, oh yeah, we want to light fires in your house. Even doesn't matter how much you explain like, oh no, but this is like, you know, this guy's a pro, he's, you know, it's what he does for a living. Like people are just like, no. And even, yeah, it just added a level of complexity that we hadn't dealt with before. So on top of having to do the fires, having to build the set for it on a limited budget, and then bring in the creature effects again, doing that on a limited budget. What we've found when we tried to pull off something is sort of like that, whether or not, I'm sure that some people on this panel could probably go further. I think that was sort of the limit of what we can do as independent filmmakers, the limit of like, oh yeah, we're just, you know, we're some friends who came up through film school together, and like, yeah, we can pull this off together. And every film before this has sort of been a little bit more ambitious and a little bit more ambitious and has its unique challenges and that sort of thing. And we're sort of like, no, we'll just get a little bit better every time. We'll just get a little bit better at like planning things out and conceptualizing and that sort of thing. But once you start introducing these elements on top of each other, you realize like, oh, this is why you have a line producer. This is why you have a full-on production office behind the scenes, because when it's just like you and your Google Sheets sitting there and you're like, yep, okay, all right. I think if one thing goes wrong now, like we've had all of the random little things that go wrong, but if just one more goes wrong, it's all going to fall apart. It's all going to collapse under its weight. And so that was the thing that we sort of found on this one, like, yeah, this is our limit. And unless we've got, you know, a bigger entity behind us, this is about as far as we can go by ourselves. So, which is fun. It's fun to find your limits. And you know, like all of us, we're looking for those big entities behind us to help us pull off bigger visions. But yeah, it's also just humbling when you do actually get there and you're like, nope, okay, this is it. This is what we can do from a logistical standpoint, and just be like, yep, there it is. That is as good as I am.
Jenna, talk a little bit about the animation in your piece. Was it is it you and your husband alone, or was there more of a team effort? And how did you, if there was a team effort, kind of how did you bring that team on board?
So we were a team of 4, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about computer animation, but it usually takes a very large team, a very large studio, and a lot of time. So we were 4 people, and it ended up taking us 7 years actually to make a 13-minute film. So I actually ended up doing a lot of the animation myself. The others, they focus a lot more on kind of like modeling, editing. You know, I mean, there's a lot that goes into 3D. Like, you know, you're kind of, even though it's in the computer, you are kind of building a lot of stuff from scratch by hand. You know, a lot of like the textures and like composing a scene with lighting and all that. But all right, so talking back about animation, so I love animation, and something I really loved about the old silent films is you'll notice like a lot of the acting was usually very over the top and very campy, and that was kind of carried over from before there was film, when people just did theater and they would have to act really big so people in the back row can see the performance too. So, you know, in film, the quality, you know, when the quality started out, it wasn't very good. So they also had to carry over a lot of that very large acting. And since it was also a silent film, pantomime had to be very strong. So you had to, you know, very much be like, you know, and without being able to talk, you had to make sure you communicated what you were trying to say. So it was kind of fun to sort of bring that over to animation. And I mean, my husband and I actually acted out most of the movie live action first, and then kind of filmed ourselves and then animated from that reference. So it's very ridiculous looking, a little embarrassing, but it was fun to do for sure.
Great. At this time,
Does that cut exist? Do you like, can we see that somewhere?
I'm thinking of putting it up online, but I don't know. Maybe later. I don't know. It is very funny to look at for sure. Like we got like a arcane and top hat, and we're just kind of going through all the motions.
That brings up a moment now that I would like to throw out to the panelists. Is there any questions that any of the filmmakers have for any of the other filmmakers that they want to bring up right now?
One question Russ and I always like to ask of all the filmmakers is, what movies did you look at in preparation for what you were going to do? What movies did you study? Or, because that's something we always do, is go, oh, well, we have to watch like 20, 30 movies immediately before we start on this thing and see how
it's a good way to not write, and also
and someone has found our terrible secret. Yes. So that would be one of our questions. Whoever wants to go first.
Jordan, was there anything besides? Oh, go ahead. Whoever's first.
Well, I can jump in. So we, with this one, we sort of we did this quite straight away off the back of another project, Stray, a couple of years ago, and so I think with our previous films we had that really deliberate process of like, can we, what should we go and watch? And what we found was kind of interesting on this one was more about, we were talking more about books and that sort of thing. And we were sort of like, well, it was a little bit of an experiment of just like, well, what happens if we just sort of take what we did on Stray and just sort of carry it through. And also in our case, a lot of like the aesthetic is really dictated by the practical challenges of pulling things off, knowing that, okay, we're going to throw in a lot of VFX here. Okay, we've got to have fire, and we've only got so much budget for that, so we have to frame it in particular ways, and so yeah, it was a bit of a different one for us. But what about you guys?
I think it's the usual kind of stuff, obviously, The Shining and those sorts of movies, but I feel like we sort of thought about domestic films in a sense.
Yeah.
Like Kramer versus Kramer or something, like just to kind of ground it in that feeling of the house and then have that be interrupted.
Yeah, we looked at a lot of stuff also where it's night and how people light, nighttime scenes. That was just something I guess I'd never really thought about. And I think also you look at movies like The Thing or something like that, and you're like, oh, how did they get that blue? What is that blue? And you never get there, but that's what you go for. So I think, yeah, it's always John Carpenter. I think we always end up looking at John Carpenter. Making a romantic comedy, we'll look at John Carpenter. It's just what we do. So, but I think, yeah, that was it. And just, movies where people talking in, and I think, was there one where people go through a house? I feel like,
oh gosh,
we looked at how to explain geography in a house, which I don't think we probably mastered, but we looked at how other people did it really well. So, Jordan, what about you? What did you look at did you just look at exorcism movies, or what was it?
Oh no, those scary films are too scary for me, and all of your films were too scary for me as well. I have a very delicate sensibility, and so I did watch all of your films, and they were all very scary and very well done. And I'm like, truly, I'm really impressed to be included in the group, and really just honored, because I do actually, your films are really well done. Knives Out was a big inspiration, look-wise. I like the Ghostbusters films. I really love the look of like studio comedies, like even the new Ghostbusters film. I love the like just sort of rich production design and beautiful sort of dialed in lighting of like big studio like comedy films, and or you know, not exactly comedy films, but just movies that have a lot behind them. So you'll notice I didn't really move the camera very much, just so I could sort of pack it all into shots that were stationary. Because you know, I didn't have a production designer or a producer. I was just putting this stuff in my Prius. So it's like lamp from Craigslist, and then the DP is like, I need 10 more lamps, and it's like, okay, now I'm on OfferUp buying lamps, and he's like, you know, and I need, you know, warm little bulbs. He sourced the bulbs, but it was a really small crew. I didn't have an AD or an editor or a writer or a producer. I just kind of did all of that stuff, and so I rented a U-Haul van and just, you know, got all this stuff in there. So, well, I don't know where I was going, except that, yeah, and I really like the film Sideways. Maybe that it's an obvious of an inspiration, but I really just like, I like the performance work. So yeah, for me, I put a lot of effort into the performances and a lot of effort into the production design.
Jason, how about you? Were there any movies that you went and searched out to kind of inform your portrayal in the film?
Yeah, that was a bit of a struggle at the beginning until I found this idea of a guy going to work and controlling his office. So basically, I got inspired by scenes and situations in specific movies. I would say specific situations and scene in some movies. I would say Christian Bale in American Psycho, for example, or Wolf of Wall Street with DiCaprio, like at the office, enjoying his stuff, doing crazy stuff. A bit of Memento as well in the character. And then I just worked on it. I worked myself in many offices in Switzerland, so I just remember some of the people I met who were not like the most likable people, and also from the best and the most likable people I met. So it's a kind of a mixed. But yeah, mainly Wolf of Wall Street and American Psycho, especially Christian Bale, because I really love this actor and his performance. And yeah, I just wanted to say to Jordan, it sounds very interesting the way you work with actors, with the no cuts between takes, and just let it roll and give space to improv and mistakes, and maybe finding the best in some moments that you were not expecting. So it sounds really cool from what I heard so far.
Yeah, thank you. It is it is a unique way.
Yeah.
EP definitely had to get on board with it.
Jenna, is there any films beyond the kind of the obvious Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu,
Yeah.
or you know, some whole host
Definitely
of
the
animated
biggest.
films?
For sure.
Was there anything that kind of inspired you outside of those films, the obvious influences?
I think yeah, because we were making a CG film, so we had to create like our whole world from scratch. So I think yeah, like obviously Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like even we took a lot of the influence of how the characters look from those specific characters as well. I mean I love horror movies. I love horror movies so much. Actually, when we're done with this question, I'd love to hear what everybody's favorite horror movie is. Also, if I could add a question to that. But so I think like not horror movie related, we looked at a lot of things that kind of limited the camera to sort of like, you know, sort of a stage kind of setup. Like you could look at Wes Anderson films, and a lot of his movies kind of have that cross section, and you're sort of only looking at one side of the room as if it were theater almost. And also looking at like a lot of musicals and stuff, just because the acting's usually very large and over the top. So I actually watched Fiddler on the Roof a lot because the actor playing Tevye in that, he's so emotive just in his face. And it's just a really good performance to see that even if you see it with no sound, like you can really get a lot of that powerful emotion across. And also like in terms of lighting, because we're going for a very, you know, dark, sinister film. And, you know, I mean, like you'd probably want to look at something like Tim Burton or something, but I actually love all films directed by Clint Eastwood. I think you could look at any Clint Eastwood movie and just pay attention to the lighting, and his blacks go black. You know, like just watch $1 Million Baby, and it's like incredible how dark that film actually gets. You will see just like a sliver of somebody's face, and you might not be as aware of it because it's not really a sinister movie and you're not meant to be scared of that moment, but like the lighting in all of his films it's incredible for sure. And as far as horror movies, my favorites are Poltergeist and Pet Sematary.
Kevin, how about you? Why don't you go next? Favorite horror movies, and then also what other movies, it might even play into this, what other movies did you kind of go to reference the filmmaking for Haunted Swordsman?
Favorite horror movie, hands down for me, is Alien. I snuck into the theater. I saw it. I went running out of the theater. So it just really, of all films, I mean, Exorcist as well, but Alien to me is just one of my all-time favorite films of all time. But and then in terms of the films that my DP and I looked at, I just started working with this guy Bennett Cerf, who I met the DP I met at a camera trade show, and he was demonstrating camera work, and it was so amazing that I pitched the samurai film, puppet film, like about a year before we even started. So he and I looked at a lot of films, and I think aside from the Kurosawa films, we looked at 13 Assassins, that film, and loved the desaturated look. We also, there were films like the Lone Wolf and Cub series, and then Ninja Scroll, the anime. I love the creature work in that, and just that cinematography, those shot setups were very similar to also Kurosawa setups, but done in a dynamic anime style. And then we wanted to shoot a lot of sequences out on location, out at these cliffs. So we really were looking at like Terrence Malick style photography with puppets. So that was kind of our goal, was to make it seem gritty and natural, naturalistic lighting. So we took the puppets out to like actual rock formation locations to film at.
All right. Summers Brothers, why don't you give us your favorite horror film?
Us?
The Thing.
I was gonna say you have Suspiria, and then Rosemary's Baby. Some of the more obvious ones. I think a less obvious one would be, I think Bergman does some really scary stuff in his movies. I'm always impressed by how he sneaks the supernatural in there. I think Fanny and Alexander has some particularly unsettling moments, and then Through a Glass Darkly, I still think is one of the ending is one of the scariest endings I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, besides the obvious, like The Shining, I can always go back to, but recently I've watched Possession a bunch with Isabella Jonte, and that's a great one. Really, I think that was probably an influence on us recently. So.
Yeah, and just one more would be, it's not the one everybody usually cites, but Carpenter's Prince of Darkness.
Yes.
I always go back to that movie.
Yeah, well, I kept yelling out The Thing because I remember when we met a couple of years ago up the bar, we had a very long and involved discussion, and that's one of mine. Jordan, you said you didn't like scary movies, but if you had to pick one that you were going to revisit, what would it be?
I love the film Signs. That's about as scary as I can go, but I love it, and I find it a really powerful movie that I really love, and I do draw a lot of inspiration from.
Sorry, my finger jumped off there. Jason, how about you? What are your favorite scary movies?
My top one, well, it's quite an obvious one, is The Thing, Carpenter, because the first time I saw it, I was 13, and I was like, how did they do that? How is that possible? Especially when you know that it's quite an old movie now, and it looks so real. The Thing and Shining as well, and Poltergeist also, because that's the three movies I've seen them quite in the same period of my life. So yeah, these ones are my top one. But then my favorite genre of horror films is zombies. Anything with zombies, I love it. Even the bad movies.
Dean, how about you?
Mine is definitely, I know that sometimes people get a little bit like genre, you know, like rules lawyer on it, but like my all-time favorite is Aliens, the sequel. I know that some people come back and be like, no, that's an action film, and I'm like, no, like you need to watch that with like with the eyes of like someone who hasn't seen it before and without comparing it to the original. Yeah, my brother, my parents were a bit negligent in leaving me alone with my big brother when I was young, and he showed me that all of those Alien and Aliens and Predator and all of those films when I was like 6 and 7, and so buried like deep in the back of my skull, that's like really formative fears. And so even now today, when if I have a nightmare, it's usually about the xenomorph. It's usually something related to that film. And I also just think, you know, it's sort of like the thing, you know, how the hell did they do that back then? And there's a great documentary on, I think it's a Superior Firepower or whatever it is, on the making of that, and it's like one of the best, just an incredibly comprehensive documentary on like the beginning to end of like making a film. And so whenever I'm feeling like really crap and want to feel inspired about you know, filmmaking and like, oh no, you can push through it and that sort of stuff, I go and watch that, because it just like, yeah, it like reminds you of like how excellent it feels when everything's working, and how much you have to suffer through the crap to get to that feeling. So yeah, that's hands down for me, Aliens.
Yeah, I think mine are, my favorite movie of all time is Bride of Frankenstein, but kind of as horror, it's kind of not as aged as much as well in that regards, but it's still an amazing film. I used to, when I was a young teenager, go back to the scene with the people in the jars and watch that over and over again. But I would say Jaws, which was not something anyone else said, but I know a lot of us probably really love that film. And then Alien, I had a similar situation. Well, I guess it wasn't to Kevin because I didn't sneak into it, but my neighbor growing up, uh, Linda, her dad was kind of like an early adopter, so he was the first person in the neighborhood to get HBO, a big screen TV, a VCR. And I went over there one night, and her parents weren't there. It was just her and the babysitter, and they were watching Alien as they had recorded it off of HBO. And I remember watching the chest burster scene. I got there I had missed the face hugger, so I didn't know about that part. But I got there, you know, after Kane had woken up and the chest burster that happened, and I'm freaked out. And then the babysitter comes back into the room from the bathroom, and then it was like, "Oh wait, you just missed something. Let's rewind it." So rewound it, had to watch it again. I was again kind of scarred by it. And then there was the scene with Harry Dean Stanton and the alien, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Oh nope." They cut to like the cat being okay, and that was important to me. And I was like, "I'm checking out of here. I'm going away." It was a long time before I saw it again, and I think it was on like ABC television screening of it. Well, we're almost out of time here, but thank you everyone for staying around, and this conversation has been great. But what are you all working on next? And let's start with Kevin, because I think your film kind of ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, which kind of portends more. But if you can talk a little bit about what we might see, dance around some of the obstacles, if there's some development deal that's kind of pending at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. At the moment, it's there's about 6 other chapters just like this one. So this would be chapter 2. So it's all been written episodically. And Tab Murphy, the screenwriter, and I have been shopping it around and getting nice reactions. But of course, you know, it's by the time you get back in your car, you're like, did that, is that going anywhere? So there's a lot of interest as a possible episodic series. But then during lockdown, I just started developing a new story, and it's kind of a back to Victorian I think I watched Lighthouse a couple times in a row and really wanted to kind of return to something more gothic, Mario Bava, you know, Victorian era. So I have that one written too, and that's like a longer, that's like a 25-minute one. And I know the Summer Brothers were like, keep it short. So it's that dangerous, you know, where it feels, you know, you want to tell a rich story, but, you know, I don't know if it would fall into film festival world as easily. You know, it's tough to screen like a 25-30 minute long one, but that's where I stand right now.
Well, it might come together in the edit, you know, you might know. But I can speak personally, if a film is good, film festivals will always find a place for it. Jenna, why don't you go ahead and talk next? What are you working on next?
So I mean, I'm not anything else, I think, extended for Mechanical Dancer on my end, but my husband, he actually, he's in the attractions industry, and he was kind of exploring the idea of making possibly a dark ride or a pretzel ride or something out of our story. So, you know, like virtually, unless we got funding, that would be cool. But like just to see what would be some of the fun challenges to actually trying to tell the short story through, you know, a dark ride scenario. And on the side, I'm actually working on a script that has potential to be a feature next, but you know, since again our team was only 4, we are definitely going to need representation to make this one a reality. But you know, fingers crossed. And after COVID's over, hopefully everything in the industry picks up again really good. So yeah.
Jason, why don't you talk about your next few projects as a performer?
So for me as a performer for the moment, there's not much because here in UK it's a total lockdown, and I cannot travel to France or Switzerland. But I'm working on more music projects and voiceover projects, and also a bit of writing. I can tell for the director of the movie, Monica, she's working on a series. She founded a production company. It's a Swiss series about the bunkers. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but Switzerland is the only country in the world that can shelter the entire population in bunkers in case of war or catastrophe or whatever. So she's writing a kind of a thriller about this, which I think is a very good idea because I've never seen it before. And yeah, that's it. I think the writer of Look What You've Done is working on a sequel. So let's see.
All right, Jordan, what do you go ahead next? What's up for you once COVID is finished?
Well, I'm working on a feature film adaptation of this short film, Carl the Exorcist. And I just finished up co-writing a comedy pilot about the struggles of a film crew while they're filming a true crime documentary. And so I like that project as well.
Great. Dean, what's next for you?
So we're in development with a feature of Inferno that's you know stems from the same idea, though it's evolved quite a bit. And we got a couple of other things, and then more immediately, I think we're just we got a bit restless during the lockdown here. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but here in Australia, things are pretty good. You know, we went through a 3-day lockdown this last week, but it was, you know, basically there were 4 cases and everyone went, okay, we got a lockdown. And now we're already out because they've contact traced it. So we've got a lot of American production coming over, and, you know, we can sort of get out there and shoot, and everything's pretty safe at the moment. But we have, you know, we just got restless, and we've seen a lot of great shorts, you know, like some of you guys lately with, you know, where I was saying before, you know, a really elemental premise where it's just about where do you put the camera and where do you put the actors. And we got really jealous of some of the work that you guys and filmmakers like you have been doing, and had that reaction to the process of making a really complicated one and just going, yeah, let's make it smaller. So my partner, she's Brazilian. She's from one of the most populous cities in the world, in Rio, and meanwhile I'm from a really little rural town here in Australia, and so it's a bit of a story about it's a horror film about that sort of cross-cultural clash, and sort of telling it as a bit of like an urban legend cautionary tale thing of like, oh, if you're ever driving through a small town and nobody will help you, no one will even answer directions, like keep driving because there's something wrong with that town. So that's interesting, and we're pretty excited to get out and shoot that, hopefully mid-year. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay, Summers Brothers, why don't you finish up for us?
We keep threatening to make a feature, so we're kind of working on that. I think definitely probably something in the horror genre, just the most sellable genre. I mean, if we're up to us, it'd probably be a bunch of One Car Away ripoffs, but I think horror is always a good medium to get your ideas across. And then I think we're thinking about doing something in the YouTube space, kind of doing a channel where you get to listen to us rattle on about movies and types of movies and things like that. So we'll see. That's something we're exploring. And I don't know.
If we can squeeze in another short, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So we'll see when.
Maybe something a bit more Ingmar Bergman related.
I always try and slip that in there. So.
But I did want to say we were really thrilled to be counted among the filmmakers in this shorts block and to be part of SIFF. It's an amazing festival. Dan, thank you and everyone there for putting this together. It's really amazing. I'm sorry this year's virtual. I'm happy because more people can go, but I'm sad because we've actually been to the festival. It's amazing. So if everybody here can go, you should go. It's fun, just as a fan even.
And so, just these Q&As are always our favorite part. We just love meeting and talking to other filmmakers.
Yeah, such a blast. So we're gonna stalk all y'all on social media, so be ready for that. And find you.
Same.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and it was great to be able to do something resembling what the normal festival will be. This Q&As are kind of one of my favorite part, and also meeting with the filmmakers and being able to go out to the bars, which unfortunately are closed and have been closed for a year. But hopefully, the next few months things will pan out better and we can do this in the future. SIFF 2022 and beyond. I hope you all keep making films and submitting it to SIFF. Just remember, always just email me. You can make sure that you get a alumni waiver for that. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule this Easter to speak with me and the folks who are watching your films, and love all your films. You make it easy to program your films when you make films this good. It's really, in fact, maybe actually it's a little bit difficult because you have to edge out a few other things, but everything here was, made the cut and top of the list. So thank you all so much for your time and your craft and your making films this great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
It was a
you.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan, so much. And everybody's film, it was so exciting to just click on the next screener. They just all floored me. So congrats, everyone.